having a great short game isn't just about having great technique. We have to be able to take that technique and adapt it to different lies that we face out on the golf course. This is what the best players in the world are amazing at. So this might just be the most important short game lesson you ever have. You do not want to miss this. As you well know, when you're out on the golf course, you can be faced with any situation around the green. Sometimes you can have a bare lie, a fluffy lie, wet lies. There's so many different kinds of lies out there. The key is being able to take a fundamentally good technique and be able to adapt certain variables so that you can give yourself the highest possible chance of performing that shot correctly and hitting it close to the hole. So we're going to talk through today 3 main factors that are going to influence how this club works through the turf. Now, the factor that we are trying to change is the bounce. So bounce can be our best friend, but it can also be our enemy. To prove it to you, imagine you're playing in sunny Florida where the grass is very tough. You need a little bit more bounce there, especially maybe if it's just been raining, the ground's a little bit softer. You need some bounce to prevent that club from digging. But then if you come over to where I am, the UK right now, and you go to the open venue in the middle of the summer where the ground's baked out, bounce sort of becomes your enemy there because the ground is very, very tight, it's very firm, the grass is extremely short, especially on the fairway, so you have to be able to take bounce off in order to hit that shot correctly. But to start with, let's define what bounce is. In its most simple, basic form, bounce is how much is that leading edge off the ground when the shaft is dead vertical. So for example, I have a 58-degree wedge here. I also have 10 degrees of bounce on this wedge. This means that the leading edge is 10 degrees up off the ground. Now, wedges also have different grinds on them, so the bounce shape can be different. They can be wider, thinner, they can have some arcs to them. Again, what I would say is if you are curious about bounces, very much personalize it to where you are in the world. You know, if you're playing in a climate where it's very Bermuda-y grass, you might need a little bit more bounce. If you're somewhere else where maybe it's a lot drier, you might not need as much bounce. So go get fit for them. That's the easiest way to make sure you've got the right bounce. But essentially, bounce is how much is that leading edge off the ground. So the more bounce we have, the more the leading edge is off the ground. Now, in some situations, this is going to really benefit us. It's going to be our sort of safety blanket. But like I said, if you're playing off like a hard pan lie, maybe you're in the UK links golf where it gets very, very tight, bounce suddenly becomes your enemy. Why? Well, essentially the leading edge becomes too high off the ground. So if I was to return the club back with that amount of bounce, what I would find is I would sort of drop kick the shot and I might thin it. Because that leading edge is up, it's not going to get underneath the shot, so I'm not going to get any spin, and ultimately I'm going to hit a poor shot from there. Conversely, if I'm playing in a climate where maybe I need more bounce and I have a low bounce wedge, what are we going to see? Well, that leading edge is going to dig into the ground. You're probably going to hit a lot of shots heavy. You're also going to take quite a bit of a divot as you're hitting these chip and pitch shots. So it's really important you understand where you are in the world, going to get fit for the right amount of bounce for yourself. And also remember that the bounce that I have on my 58 is different to my 52, which is also different to my 46. So easiest thing to do is get fit for the correct bounce, and then what we're going to do today is teach you how to manipulate the bounce to your benefit with the same club. The first variable we're playing with is shafting. Now, shafting is probably the most obvious one when it comes to adding bounce, taking bounce off, and ultimately changing where that leading edge is relative to the ground. So if I was to set up dead neutral, shaft dead vertical, I would be presenting whatever bounce is on this club. So for this club, I have 10 degrees of bounce. 10 degrees of bounce is presented right there, and that leading edge is up 10 degrees. Now, the more I start to move my hands forwards and de-loft the club this way, the closer the leading edge is getting to the ground, which is taking bounce off. Again, have a little think. What lie is this going to be suitable for? Well, that very tight lie. So again, we're moving the hands forwards. The more we move the hands forwards, the closer we get the leading edge to the ground, the less bounce we have. Now again, the more I start to move it back, the more I'm adding bounce. Now, I wouldn't recommend having the handle back because suddenly now the leading edge starts to get very up in the air, but there are a couple of occasions where you can do that. So if I set up here, I've got 10 degrees of bounce because the shaft is dead level. If I now move it back, I am technically adding bounce. Again, very tricky shot sometimes to play, but in certain situations you're going to be able to do it. Now, the one thing I would say with shafting is don't see it as you either have no bounce or your shaft is vertical. I want you to see it as sort of a sliding scale. So some shots you might feel a little bit more comfortable just having a touch of shafting. So obviously, if I have 10 degrees of bounce and I ballpark add 4 degrees of shaft lean, I now have 6 degrees of bounce on there. So I still have a little bit of margin for error. If you're somebody who does like to play it this way, then again, think about maybe the wedges you might need. If you like to play it with a lot of shaft lean, chances are you're probably going to need a higher bounce option. If you're somebody who plays it very sort of neutral with the shaft, you might need lower bounce options. So again, now hopefully you're seeing that with shaft lean, we can adjust to hit different shots out of different lies. The second variable that very much goes hand in hand with shaft lean is ball position. And again, ball position can aid us in trying to change the bounce on the club. So for example, if I play the ball more forwards, I am going to be more likely to play the shaft level. So as a result, playing the ball more forwards is going to encourage a shot where we have more bounce to it. Again, try and think about the lies where this is going to be beneficial. If I was to then start to shuffle towards the target and play the ball more off my back foot, you can now see this is actually going to make it a lot easier to play the shot with some shaft lean. This is why when you see players hit high shots, they play the ball a little bit more forwards, it encourages more loft and more bounce. And this is also why when you see players hit low running shots, like a chip and run, that they play the ball more back because it encourages shaft lean. So although ball position doesn't directly affect bounce, it encourages certain positions. So ball more forwards is going to encourage more of a neutral shaft, which therefore is going to present more bounce. Ball more back is going to encourage more shaft lean, which is therefore going to encourage less bounce, more like a chip and run shot. The final variable is opening and closing the club face. So again, if we just imagine we're playing this shot with dead neutral shaft lean. So again, we're presenting 10 degrees of bounce with a nice square face. If I then started to open the face, we would start to actually increase the bounce. So we would start to see that this is a really nice shot for, again, those fluffier lies. This is why you often see players that are sometimes playing into the grain slightly open the face, because again, this is just encouraging a little bit more loft there, which is going to help us in case the club gets tangled up, but it's also offering a little bit more bounce to the shot. So if you want to add a little bit more bounce, you can also open the face. Now, conversely, if you go the other way, you can actually take some bounce off by closing the face. And players do this. They do hit chip shots where they aim slightly to the right, they close the face, and this reduces the bounce. Again, hard pan lies. I point to there because that's a very, very hard lie. So a hard pan lie, maybe, again, a links golf sort of lie. It feels like you're towing the club in slightly. That's going to reduce the bounce. That's going to help you get the leading edge under. And ultimately from there, again, you're adapting the club by opening and closing the face with certain bounces that we're trying to achieve. Now, obviously, the variable that also you have to be wary of is loft. So the more you open the face, the more loft you're going to hit. So potentially, if you've got like a 30-yard shot, you might need to club down to say, I've got a 58 here. I might need to jump to my 52 if I'm going to open the face, just to get that little bit extra carry to make sure that the added loft doesn't cancel that out. Conversely, if I'm closing the face slightly, I might need to loft up. So I might need to go from my 52 to my 58. Because I'm closing the face, that is going to be taking a little bit of loft off. So again, these are variables that I want you to play with. So this is the fun part. This is where I'm going to encourage you to go out for half an hour around your chipping green at your local golf club and practice changing these variables. Give yourself different lies, good lies, bad lies, fluffy lies, bare lies, and play with these variables. You will notice that you'll be able to take that same technique, so the basic same technique, change your setup position, change these variables very, very slightly, and you'll start to hit the shot way better. But you'll also notice, well, actually, if I take a certain shot and I do this, it's going to produce a way worse result. So you'll start to figure out, okay, in this situation, I need to do this. In this situation, I need to do this. This is going to help me increase my chances of playing the shot. Now, like I said, you aren't just going to be doing one. You might be blending them together. To finish up, I want to give you some guidelines as to what shots might need certain bounces. So the first one is anything where it's bare, it's dried out, anything where the ball is very much just sat on the dirt or very, very close to the ground, you are going to need to favor something with a little bit less bounce. This is going to help you get the leading edge under and ultimately from there produce better shots. Anything where the ground's wet, maybe you're playing into grain, it's a lie where the ball's sat up slightly, you might need to present a little bit more bounce. This is going to help get that club gliding through. You're not going to dig it, you're going to glide the club through, and ultimately from there you're going to see some better results. But like I said, the key is to experiment. Take these variables. There are far more variables at play, but these are 3 simple variables that you can do in your setup up to help you produce better results. So that's it for today's video. Hopefully you've liked it. If you do, give it a like down below and also subscribe. I'll be posting a lot more videos like this in the near future.